Hello students, I hope all of you are doing well. Welcome to another session. I am Honey Rachel. I teach Biotechnology in K.B.N college. In this session, let us try to understand something interesting. Before I start, I want you to ask this question. Who's first? Is it chicken or egg? All of us in our lifetime should have gone through this question. And it's interesting to think about it and to understand it as well. Have you found the answer yet? No, we haven't. Another question which is similar and which is deeper is that how actually life came into existence, how the origin of life happened. Have you thought about that question in your life? Yes. We all might have thought at least once in our life how life came into existence in the first place. Today, let us try to make a list of theories of different thinkers. Thinkers like you, thinkers like me, who made a theory out of their understanding, out of their observation about origin of life. Shall we? Let us start. The first theory is theory of special creation, and this theory suggests that there is one God and he is a supernatural power who created the whole life. And this was proposed by Hebrew and his associates. This theory says that the supernatural power which existed from the beginning and will exist till the end, he created life in one go, and from then the creation existed like that, and there was no drastic changes in the creation. This was the first theory, special creation. Many scriptures like Bible and Gita tries to elucidate the special creation, and the thinkers like Hebrew got their inspiration from these biblical and scriptures. The second theory is cosmic panspermia. You might have observed the shooting stars in the sky, night in the sky. They are wonderful to watch. Many scientists observe these shooting stars, cosmic things coming from the universe to the earth. And through their observations, especially Richter, what he did was he made a theory that the existence or the origin of life might have begun by some dust from outside the earth into the earth, cosmic dust, or some units of life that traveled from other planets into our planet, or from spores, unit of life, or panspermia itself. So he proposed basically the life came from outside onto the earth in the form of spores, panspermia, cosmic dust, etc. That's what cosmic panspermia theory says. This is the second theory. Let us understand the third one. It was von Helmont who proposed this theory, and this theory is spontaneous generation. To understand this theory, please observe the pictures that I displayed on the screen. You see a frog present in a water body, mud. Yes, and you also see a rat. This theory, as the name says, spontaneous, this proposes that von Helmont, while he was observing a mud puddle, a few days back it was empty without any life, but suddenly he observed frogs coming out of it. And he had another observation. That is, he went to a to a storing place where rice is stored, and few days back he did not observe anything in that storage place, and suddenly few days later he observed rats coming out of it. And not only that, observation he made on soil. Few days before he did not observe any life in the soil, and suddenly he observed some earthworms coming out of the soil. Out of all these observations, he thought to himself that all the living things are being generated from the non-living organisms. Like the frog is coming from the mud, and the rat is coming from the rice. Earthworm is coming from the earth. And these observations made him to do some conclusions that all life is coming from non-living things. There is life from non-living. And this theory he suggested with a name called abiogenesis. Genesis of life from non-living. But many of the people, many of the theorists, they couldn't make it with they couldn't understand this abiogenesis, spontaneous generation. To prove von Helmont wrong, they proposed another theory, and that is spontaneous generation, biogenesis. To prove von Helmont wrong, few scientists, and one among them Louis Pasteur, conducted an experiment in which he took a beaker and he took water in that beaker. In that he mixed yeast along with sugar, and he took that yeast solution into a round bottom flask. And to that round bottom flask, what he did is he boiled that a bit, and then he sealed that round bottom flask with an S-shaped glass, and then it became a swan neck. And he took the same apparatus, filled yeast, boiled it, and left it unclosed. So one vessel he had a swan neck flask, and the other without being closed. And he in this observation, in this experiment, he kept two of the beakers, kept them for few days untouched. And what he observed is, in swan neck flask he observed no life at all, while in the other one which he kept open, in that he saw few cells living in it. And through this experiment he made a conclusion that the life comes only from pre-existing life, or cells grow from only pre-existing cells. Like in the jar number 2 where it is kept open, in that open jar the life came because the jar is exposed to air where there might be some cells. When those cells came into that jar, and then came the few other cells. While if you consider the second case where the jar is closed completely with a glass, where the jar is swan neck, there is no exposure, there is no existence of life. So that's why there was no life further. And this theory was given a name biogenesis because it explains how life comes from pre-existing life, and the spontaneous generation abiogenesis theory was ruled out, was understood wrong through these experiments. Not only this, there were few other experiments which helped us understand that abiogenesis is not a fact. Further, there is another theory. There is another theory which helps us to understand the origin of life. the theory of chemical theory. As we have observed earlier in the spontaneous generation, where Louis Pasteur was able to interpolate that the life comes from pre-existing life, and only when the nature is exposed to certain temperature, certain surroundings, then the life is being generated. With that observation, what Miller and his associates did was they created an environment which was very similar to the environment at the starting of the earth, or when the earth is primitive, when there was no life, the conditions they replicated them in the laboratory. So there was seas, there was atmosphere, and there were gases during the primitive earth, right? They try to interpret the same atmosphere in the laboratory and observe if there might be any interaction of the environment and the non-living things, and if there is any generation of life. So to prove this, if they were right or wrong, they made an apparatus which looked exactly like this, and there were two vessels which were connected together without any exposure of air. In one vessel they took boiling water, and in the other one there was electric charge passed by using of electrodes, and these two were connected along together. There was another important part, which is condenser. So in the first chamber, that is the lower chamber in which water was kept, it is boiled at high temperature, and this boiled water, it evaporated and traveled through the connection. And when this vapor was exposed to the gases which were present in the second chamber, there we have gases which are usually present in the atmosphere. The gases like methane, ammonia, water vapor, and hydrogen gas. When this water vapor, which is boiled and came through the lower chamber, came and interacted with these gases, and along with that, when there was electric charge, what happened was there was chemical bond, chemical interaction, chemical bond breakage and makage between all these gases along with water. And after that is done, the water vapor, it traveled out of that chamber, and when it is exposed to the condenser, all that vapor is converted to water, and then that water settled down in the collection trap. This process, it continued for many days. Our Miller continued this experiment for many days, and it continued. The boiling water went up, came down, and it traveled in this cycle for few days. And do you know what Miller observed after few days of performing this experiment? Yes, he observed amino acids in the water he collected, and he made a conclusion from this experiment that there was some interaction between the water, the environment in the sky, and that interaction, that chemistry, it then converted into amino acids, carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, which the biomolecules which make our body, and that's how we are constructed little by little through the chemistry that happened in the environment. This is chemical theory of origin of life. This is how different theories and different thinkers try to explain us origin of life, and I hope you also have some perspective about how life came into existence. Share your theory with us in the comments below.